good afternoon. It is Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and I'm broadcasting to you as we turn from a Venus day into the night of Mars. This is Friday evening, Jupiter hour. The ascendant is Saturn ruled. With Saturn in the third house in Pisces retrograde. So interesting. Mars itself is on 28 degrees Leo, just about an inch from delving into Virgo territory, which is the topic of this episode. The midheaven is on Spica in Libra, ruled by Venus. So Spica, the planet of eloquence, perhaps is why I had picked this particular midheaven. I haven't picked it, I just pressed record and that's what's showing up. So I'm like, ascendant ruled by Saturn, why would I do that? But then the midheaven is ruled by Venus and the midheaven is on Spica. So Jupiter is in 10 degrees Taurus. The nodes are 15 minutes in astrological terms away from ingressing into the polar opposites of where they have been, which is Rahu is going to be ruled by Mars. And without further ado, let's take a look at Mars into Virgo. So, monthly astro calendar. And before we delve into what will Mars be doing in Virgo, here is Mars. This is July 10. So July 10, Mars ingresses, which is 3 days from now, 2 days from now, 3 days from now. So this is the ingress chart. Mars is still on the anaretic degree here. The moon will be applying to trine Mars as it ingresses. Yes, the moon will be applying to trine Mars as it ingresses into Virgo. Before we even take a look at what Mars is doing in Virgo, I want to give you a bit of timeless teaching of the archetype of Mars in Virgo. So if you already know this, then you can keep on to the timestamp, which I hope to put when I begin to talk about the transits it will be doing in Virgo. If you don't know this, then you can come to this episode anytime where you run into delineating Mars in Virgo, natal or transit. And so, one thing to keep in mind is that Mars will also be invisible during the time, and I always like to refer to Crassia or Trifon when talking about invisibility of the planets. Crassia made a wonderful video about invisibility of the planets and how it associates with the farmers' attempted revolution, which unfortunately did not succeed, and how the invisibility of Mars make it operate in certain domains or energy forms that it doesn't usually operate. It's not 3D Mars. Invisibility is not just 3D Mars. There's something more. And so if we're operating in 3D Mars, we're not supported, basically, because it is way more intricate and basically unseen for the way that it operates. But you can rest assured that Mars does go direct, and everything that was unseen is to be exposed, okay? Even, you know, a baby comes to life eventually, okay? A baby goes out of the womb eventually. So what is hidden to protect something, but then later it is exposed. Or when the world is ready to hear something, then you will hear about energy, invisibility, astral realm, all those things. Now, Mars in Virgo. So first of all, Mars. What is Mars? Mars, keywords. Iron, penis, weapon, penetrative quality, drive, passion, assertion, justice. A lot of people do not get this part. It is very important for penis health. The action of Mars is to assert justice, to sever ties with the unjust. Mars can not only set the boundaries, but cord cutting is like, that's a Mars thinking. So sharp objects as well for this reason. And Mars matures at 28 according to Indian astrology. And you can think about most mandatory army services are at age 19 and even 17 and a half. Okay, so you can think for yourself. And of course, Mars is planet of war. It is ruling Scorpio and Aries. Aries rules the head, and so also the cognition, the I think, therefore I am, the great I am, the head of the baby. So self-assertion of people and of peoples. Okay, it's the individual self-assertion. It's also on a national level, it's self-determination. Okay, declaration of independence that is acted upon. Mars, as the ruler of Aries, is doing you. Mars, as the ruler of Scorpio, is more yin in element. It's more deeply psychological. It basically rules the death and rebirth cycles of life. So if the Aries is the head of the baby, the process of contraction, explosion into death or into life is traditionally considered scorpionic, which is why they associate Pluto with Scorpio, because it does similar things on a cellular level. Mars, as the ruler of Scorpio, has to do with iron, blood, genitalia, both vagina and the genital health, basically. Secretion, so the anus secretions, a lot of things have been delegated to Pluto, like feces, secretion, compost, or that which we deem as we throw out, recycling of trash and so on. But originally, Mars as the ruler of Scorpio would be associated probably with those as well. It can also indicate the brain surgeon, the psychologist. So the Freudian saying about the knife of the psychoanalysis, and that is the knife that can cut and the knife that can cut, like the birthday cake, but like you have to be careful, you have to do it correctly, but you need a lot of precision with Mars. So, I think it was Aristo that talked about the wisdom of using the right measure of aggression against the right people at the right time, you could basically associate that with Mars wisdom. So in medicine, we think about the Hippocratean medicine. We think about, and this is already the link to Virgo, we think about what we think, what we eat, how we act during the day, what we secrete probably, how we relate, and you also think about the knife. So the knife basically is the last of the medical tools that a good doctor is supposed to use. This is surgery or amputation. So Virgo, and I mean tropically, of course, like the archetype of Virgo. I'm working here tropically. So Virgo is a very intricate and interesting depiction, because Virgo, the constellation, or the drawing around the constellation, is of a young maiden. From Virgo, we're supposed to assume she's a virgin. And therefore, it's traditionally considered associated with purity. However, if you go to the terms or the phases of Virgo and sexuality, you actually find a lot of sexual love, okay? Or the lunar dimensions in Virgo have to do with either divorce or a sexual union that is erotic, that is very sexual. Unlike the lunar dimensions of marriage in tropical Aquarius. Faces have to do with, I think, kinky sexuality. I haven't seen the updated version of Austin Capricorn, the faces, but has to do with sexuality that is even more kinky. So there is something here that we can't really understand, okay? The signification of purity as lack of sexual experience versus quite liberated sexual experience that has to do with even alternative sexuality, we deem as alternative sexuality today. Okay, so Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So the constellation, the drawing is basically of a human form. So Virgo is one of our human form signs. Unlike the polar opposite, which is Pisces, that is two fish swimming to the opposite direction but united. And so that tells us that it rules humanity. Virgo is also associated with healing. I don't know if that refers to sexual healing or whatnot, but the thing is that it does associate with discerning, diagnosing, frequency, very specific methodical type of study, and healthcare providing. Okay, while the polar opposite, which is Pisces, is more holistic, seeing the whole picture, Zen-like consciousness. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And so the word as a healing form. The herbs as something you study and combine. Chemistry, okay, is also Virgo. It is also to do with writing. Writing a book is very much Mercury. Virgo is high concentration that allows you to study something. And you can see also it's an earth sign, a mutable earth sign. Okay, so it is changeable yet practical. Okay. Virgo is associated with a lot of managerial roles, and here we begin to blend the Mercury Mars here. When we talk about a planet in a sign, we can think of the two planets that rule it, which will also, for those of you who are into non-zodiacal astrology, yes, there is such a thing. You can turn to Michael A. Bryan for such as he's a great non-zodiacal astrologer, traditional astrologer. So when you think about the planet in a sign, you can think about, well, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, Mars is Mars entering there. So let's think about the adjoining of Mercury Mars. What is a Mercuried Mars? Okay, and here we begin to play. Okay, think of Mars as entering the home of Mercury. However, this is tropical astrology, and the domain of Virgo does bear a meaning when we take zodiacal astrology into account. And it's not just any Mercury. It's a Mercury as the ruler of Virgo. And this is important to understand because we're talking about the Mars that is the ruler of Scorpio and Aries in the domain of the Mercury that is the ruler of Gemini and Virgo, but in the room, like in the room of Virgo. Okay, so Mars bringing any Mars theme, both Scorpionic and Arian, into the specific domain of Mercury as the ruler of Virgo. However, it's not that Gemini would not be affected. We can understand it zodiacally as the mutable axis being affected by that Mars, okay, to be particular. And we can understand that in the terms of, hey, it's a Mars-Mercury thing. And then we can swish out the zodiacal place that Mars is going and say it's a Mars-Mercury. Okay. Now let's think about the combination. I gave you a set of things that to do with Mars, a set of things that to do with Virgo and Mercury. Now I have to give you one thing more. Mercury has to do with trade, children, judges, adaptability, the doors, okay, the door itself, the door entering a place, the place where trade occurs, where exchange occurs, and therefore it also rules bureaucracy, exchange, negotiation, and business, trade. I said all that, and also being the psychopomp, basically the leader to the next world or the crossing over. When it's our time to cross, is also considered Hermes, which is a deity that is associated with Mercury. So, what are the possible combinations? We have Mars. So it can be a surgery to the intestines, which is ruled by Virgo. It can be the effect of Mars-related food on the intestine health. For example, what happens when you eat salty food, spicy food, especially spicy food? Okay, what happens when you eat a lot of spicy food? It cleanses your intestines. An overdose has some, it can burn your bum if you're sensitive to that, which is another Mars thing. So that's on like a more medical level. Okay, what happens to Mars as a result of Mercury? Okay, so how does nervous system health affect genital health? So what you consume mentally, how you think mentally, or if you have any ailment that affects your nervous system, that affects your endocrine system, that affects your genitalia health. So that is another way this can be. So it's like spices on the intestines and neural related issues in spirit or in matter on the genitalia, on our iron level, iron absorption, and so on and so forth. This is more into the medical aspect of it. Mars can also signify conflicts and having to sever ties and saying sharp words. It can be writing the book about Mars-related issues, so detective work, criminology, penetrating, studying into trade, okay, studying into trade systems. This can as well be, because Mars also rules with this drive and passion and power and so on and so forth, but ruling that, the genitalia chakra, it also rules the root wealth. Okay, so the desire for, money, power, respect, or whatnot is also fiscal wealth, in the drive around this. So it's not dissociated with trade and the things that Mercury rules. So much so that it is difficult to differentiate at times. Real estate, so selling, buying, real estate, movements in the market. It can signify conflicts around diagnosis, okay, because Virgo is diagnosis, Mars is decisiveness, but it's also conflict. So you can have conflicts around diagnosis of a disease. And here It is not, well, it's not impossible that it will be like personality issues, but it can simply mean conflict of the medicines, conflict between doctors. Do they suffer from the vaccine? Do they suffer from long COVID? We don't know. And kind of like those heated conversations. Mercury conversation, Mars heat excess heat. I forgot to say, Mars is a hot and dry planet. Mercury is adaptable in its temperature, so Mars just heats up the place. Conflicts amongst journalists, judges, conflicts around trade system, around basically it's conflict about how to apply something, because Mercury ruled apply, what we apply. Hands-on, Mercury literally rules the hands, so hands-on experience versus the passion, the drive, and so on and so forth. Mars, Mercury. So chemistry and the finances around it. It can also mean breakthroughs, okay? And Virgo, although Virgo is not Gemini, okay, it's not as jovial supposedly, it does not lack a sense of humor. And Mercury is humor of ambiguity with very sharp words, okay? And so this is where, you know, this come into my seventh. We both need to be cautious, but if we use this instrument on analyzing world events rather than analyzing our partners, then we can actually get somewhere here, okay? And there can be a play of very sharp words that unveils certain things, because Mars is about discovery, unveiling the mystery. It's drawn to the mystery to poke at it and discuss it and expose it eventually. Okay, whistleblowing is also a Mars thing. It's not just a Neptune thing. So whistleblowing. It's not impossible to have whistleblowers with this, especially not when Neptune is opposing, and then we need to be cautious about the information, how useful it is. So crime journalists, books about criminals, criminology, or books about investments, startups, because Mars also rules Aries, which is startups, entrepreneurship, as well as this brokerage, and so on and so forth. There is a flipping of, like, it is the wit of trade, the wit of the war game within those fields. So it's kind of like the war game that you do within those fields. Managerial warfare, unfortunately, can occur with this one. On a more erotic level, you can be attracted to, you can be sapiosexual with this one, actually, because it has literally arousal of the genitalia due to mercurial abilities. Okay, so they can take all kinds of forms, and that's sapiosexuality is also one of them. So try to come up with good stuff as well. So being sapiosexual, precision, speaking out. With this aspect, it is best to point it, speaking as a person who has it in the seventh, outside the relationship, okay? It's not so fit for personal relation, this combination, okay? For personal relationship, we need some moon, we need some warmth, but that is not excess heat. We need some, the lukewarm coolness of, Jupiter and Venus, which will be co-present with Mars there. Another thing, Mars is good underwater and is good in fire signs. Mars is not so happy in an earth sign, okay? Because it requires movement. And although this is mutable ground, what is Mars like on ground? Think about army. You cannot win a battle, you cannot win a war with aircraft alone, nor with submarines, but you much rather attack from the air or attack like on the ground, or safeguard from the air, safeguard on the ground, than go boots on ground. And unfortunately, Mars on land can signify boots on ground, whether it's tanks, whether it's whatnot, but it's the time of armed conflict is on land. So that on a mundane level can happen, okay, with this combination. For a personal thing, you may enjoy jokes around Mars themes. So there can be jokes that are more vulgar, even. But there's something very realistic about these jokes, okay? Something very realistic. It's a joke that gets at the psychology of people and practically exposes that, and put to ridicule our human nature. Okay, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, the human nature. Mercury jokes to put into ridicule our human nature. Okay. And this is where, if it is on a personal relationship, we really need to be able and willing to radically accept ourselves and laugh at ourselves with this particular one. So that's what I have to say on a general level. And this is 27 minutes. And I'm starting the aspects, the actual transit. So this is the end of timeless teaching. Let's delve into, what did I do? Here I am. 10 Yuli. So Mars begins with the ingress, of course. What's right at it? The fixed star Regulus. And so Mars begins, it ingresses to conjunct Regulus. Regulus is the nature of the sun. Mars and the sun are not friends, okay? Although the Mars is hot and dry, the sun kind of holds her heat, while Mars is can be excess heat, okay? So think of these two. There's nothing to cool them down. Mars' drive and passion is also related to youth in that sense. It's this rugged ambition. The sun is rulership. So Mars here can want to overthrow or become king, or attack the king, or the leader. So it doesn't denote necessarily a coup, because Mars, every 2 years or so, 2.5 years or so, Mars is going through this point. I don't think there's a coup every 2.5 years, but it is a heated point with this fixed star, and the moon is applying to it as it happens. So it will be felt on Earth. What the moon is doing with Mars, we're going to feel even more so. Now, because Mars will be invisible, I don't remember exactly the dates of invisibility, it's not going to operate in a direct way. It's going to operate in hidden realms. As a person who has it in the 7th, to tell you I'm happy, but this is a Mars where, and you have to think about this, okay? You need to turn to energy, and to turn to energy, not to attack. And I have a very important video on non-specific return to sender, and like how to guard your energy without having to diagnose who is it, because Mars in Virgo can play on the identity of the attacker, the identity of the person, the identity of the this, because Virgo is about discernment. Mars direct is not necessarily about discernment or having to discern in the way that Mars invisible is. So Mars invisible, it can be shape shifting, okay? Somebody takes the shape of another person and then they attack you with this shape, or they bring in visions, they bring in this, they bring in that. Now, if you do return to sender, you think that you have the face of the attacker. You just sent the energy to someone, which probably not necessarily is going to get to them, but you just wasted stuff. The best thing to do is to have a non-specific, okay? Burn at the essence of desire, have a non-specific. This I accept, this I don't accept. I don't care who. Okay, you ask spirit, do whatever you need. Okay, this is not acceptable. If I need to change something in me, please facilitate this change in me in a loving way. If I am needing to be like a better partner, a better person, like please help me be that in a loving way, in a generous way, and like teach me kindness with kindness, and allow me to be that person. But I don't, and whatever needs to be sent back, deflected, whatnot, send it back to whoever sent it, and please have them the ability to repent, so that if they repent, that they don't have to suffer for nothing. It's no grudge, no grudge on this shoulder, okay? So this is something very important to remember. If you have one of the ascendants, or Mercury or Mars is in your 7th house, your 5th house, your 3rd house, nearly all of the houses where you could have human relations, okay? It's just something important to remember. Now let's see what will Mars be doing. So Mars trines the nodes on July 10th, which is very near. It's here on Regulus. It's trining the nodes. They're 6 minutes away in astrological terms to go from Rahu being ruled by Venus to Rahu being ruled by Mars, but now Rahu is still ruled by Venus. Other than that, yeah. And again, the moon is applying to conjunct this trine. So Mars trining the nodes. Trine is a harmonious aspect that can be manifested in many ways. It means that action taken on this day is fated. The trine tells us that there will be more of ease to facilitate bringing upon that which Rahu rules and letting go of that which Ketu rules. Now, Ketu is ruled by Mars. Okay? Mars is happy to let go of something around its own essence. And this is one of the best qualities with Mars here. Okay? Mars can transform itself. Mars, Scorpio transformation, Aries self, Mars rules both. Transformation of the self. Mars can transform itself. Okay? So Mars here is happy to let go of certain aspects of the essence of itself and transform itself into what is relevant for now. Okay? On Regulus, it can either be the Mars of a leader, so the action of a leader, or an action that is targeted at the leader. And I say targeted not like, to assassinate, but targeted as in the recipe of this action is a leader. Let's see what's up next. Then we have the well-bespoken Saturn opposite Mars on July 20. with the moon already growing in here. So this is after the new moon. And again, applying to this aspect. Notice so far, whatever Mars is doing, the moon, Mars is ingressing, moon is applying, Mars is opposing Uranus, the moon is applying. Okay? We're not going to be able to ignore that. The opposition of Mars and Saturn can be a combination. Now, here I have to tell you, this is a transit. But for those of us who have Mars Saturn hard aspects, this is an aspect I see with martial artists. Okay? It's one of the martial artists aspect where it can, while it can be blocked action, okay, somebody wants to do something, something stops it. But it can also be enduring action. Okay? This is a transit. It's not a natal chart. For the people who have that aspect in their natal chart, they might know how to endure in this action more so than people that just go about it in transit and they can have their actions stopped, blocked. It's like, stop dead at your tracks kind of energy, which will eventually lead to, again, Mars transforming itself. And here Mars just needs to be more informed before it takes action. It just enters Mercury's domain in Virgo. It just learned a couple of stuff. Now it wants to apply. It's not a bad thing. We're supposed to apply as we learn. But Mars here is blocking this, but the Saturn here is blocking this action from the other polarity, kind of telling Mars, you really, you need to be more informed when you do this. You need to be more informed. There's some misinformation that's guiding you, or there's some missing link, or you got the right information, but you still don't see the whole picture yet. And Saturn isn't the sign of the whole and the void and the everything of it and the nothing of it at the same time. Well, Mars is in the sign of, I read this article and then I read this book. Now I know something. But you still got, two and a half more phases to, so 24 more degrees in Virgo to actually be able to say something to Saturn, basically in return, because they're going to tell you, oh, well, look at that. And that stops you dead at your tracks, or you try to push forward and it's frustrating. It's like, oh, why does that not work? And I give the example when I talked about this aspect was when I talked about my studies and I was in my 20s and I was working. I was like, why don't I have money to study? And I studied filmmaking, mind you. And then I was stopped dead in my tracks. There were no grants, nada, and I could not find a job that I could do. And there was no way to keep on studying, so I just volunteered on productions. So very fortunately, nothing happened to me. When I did get the funding to study, it was after my Saturn return. And then I did a whole first degree, continue right into the second, while I'm starving myself to save to the third. Because if you want to research, perspective, to be research perspective job, then it's kind of like, well, you gotta have a degree in Ivy League or else you don't stand a chance. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. And so in my second degree, I was Me Too veteran. And I understood very well why I was stopped dead in my tracks when I was going to famous directors that teach filmmaking, sitting in their classes when they look at you dead in the eye like, what's the movie about? And with all that bravado, but then, Me Too generation ahead, they're sex offenders. So there was a sex offender looking you dead in the eye, trying to make you feel weird about what you just created for some professional bravado thingy. So That's the type of situation that we have here. Okay, Mars wants to do something, it gets frustrated, but further along the road it's gonna say, oh my gosh, Saturn, thank you for not letting me go there. I was not ready for this. I had no idea where was I heading. I definitely did not have the whole picture. Thank you for stopping me when I didn't know better. Okay, this is how it's not going to be easy at the time, because it seems like there's something you really desire to do is being blocked, but later you're going to be very grateful that you had to like endure, push towards. Either you're going to complete it, or you're going to be tackling that at another time, or being more informed about how you need to respond. So this is for the month of July. Now let's go to August. Still with Mars. And all I get here is Mars enters Libra on sorry. August 1, Mars trines Jupiter. So Mars is Jupiter. Mars is just speaking about Jupiter, and I have the Orthodox neighbors singing. So I'll let them celebrate. I'll just close the windows so I can. Happy Shabbos. So, Gita Shabbos. To my Jewish viewers. So, yeah. So Mars will be exactly trining Jupiter on the 13th degree of Virgo and Taurus respectively. The moon is not trigger. The moon is applying to actually square this. Okay, so the moon is triggering this aspect by a square. So we will feel it on Earth. The trine of Jupiter and Mars, your actions and your philosophy of life or religion or faith and your value, Taurus, align. Or your philosophy of value, in theory, aligns with your acting upon it. Here, Mars is already separated, pretty much separated from Saturn. Mercury, the ruler of Mars, is in Virgo. Okay, so this is Mercury opposing Saturn. And here we get an interesting combination, because while Mars and Jupiter is jolly, okay, in trine, it just means some good action. It can also be erotically so, okay? Jupiter is the seed. Mars is that which the seed comes through out to, which is the penis. When those align, you can have a very fertile combination, okay? It's not necessarily a bad thing. On a personal level, your drive and your beliefs are aligned. You kind of feel like a person who has their philosophy of life. You kind of give out, whoever is being this yoga is giving out this vibe of a person that has their mind made up, has their values in check, and is acting in alignment with these values. So unless there is something really destructive and malefic about this, usually it gives up a very sexy attitude that is also practical and down to earth. So good for business, good for this, good for that. But Mercury, the ruler of this Mars, is opposing retrograde Saturn. By the way, Mercury will also retrograde in Virgo. Hurrah! So that means that now Mars is being blocked, not by the merit of Mars opposing Saturn, but the merit of the ruler of Mars opposing Saturn. Okay? It's kind of like somebody higher up the rank does not forward your call to action. okay? And Mercury decides here, like Mercury decides, do we execute this action? And it wants to, in here, it's saying something, delivering something, messaging something. Here is where messages can go missing. Something you can have like a crush, but not crush erotic, but crush of a system, but not something devastating. It's just kind of like you were about to send this message and then something glitched. Because Mars is blocking it. Again, you're not informed enough to participate in this conversation. And so you're going to be probably very grateful that you didn't say anything, or that you said, but it was not sent. Okay? There can be and it's very likely critical words, because Virgo can be critical, huh? Can be very elegant. Virgo is the nitpicker of the zodiac. It just wants things to be better. And it pays attention to every little detail. So it wants all the fine little details to be excellent. And that can drive their beloved nuts. And so we get another one of these blocked action. Here's blocked communication. Okay. Mars is okay in terms of philosophy about, between action and what you believe and what you act. But what you say, you want to say something, and this your action is of speech. It's an act of speech that's being blocked here, or there is an actual martial act that is being held by the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy can have to do with health, regulating healthcare, and so on and so forth. If it's one of your business houses, you want to open up a healing business house, and then the bureaucracy kind of tell you, okay, you have to, like, your place has to be so and so and so clean. You just need to serve us this, this test, which takes a lot of time and costs a lot of money. Okay, and that is one of the things that can happen with this one. August 16, Mars trines Uranus. So Mars is well into the 23rd degree of Virgo. Now Venus is not in Virgo, because Venus is going backwards. Okay, she's not going backwards. She's looking like she retrogrades. And so it's the what we call the Ereshkigal phase, the underworld Venus phase, the facing your demons, inner demons, the intricacy of war and relations. But we're talking Mars here. Mars is with Mercury, and the moon is not applying to this. Okay, the moon is at least 2 lunar mentions away from this, or 2 days away from this. Moon is actually with the sun here in Leo, with Lilith in Leo. So there's another moment here for Lilith and the sun. I do really need to get deeper at the Lilith significations. There are 4 Lilith related points in asteroids, and it's very intricate. So Mars is applying to oppose Neptune, trine Pluto. The nodes are already it's already ruling Rahu, which is important. It's already ruling Rahu. And it exactly trines Uranus. So what's happening here is very interesting. Mars is trining Uranus and is trining Pluto, but is opposing Neptune. It's not a tide orb. I would not ignore it still. This means Mars is well informed by now. Mars is not blocked by Saturn by now. Mars is happy to revolt, to shake things up, Uranus, to expose, Pluto, or to hide and expose, depending on the cycle. Pluto retrograde can also be exposed. But Neptune dissolves whatever it does here. So that means that Mars action is being dissolved by Neptune. Okay? You shoot an arrow and the arrow starts melting. It's like it's right, it's directed, you're informed, it's a sudden action, it's a swift move. You know you got the target, you send the arrow, and it's melting in the air. You're like, what the fuck? On a political level, it can seem like we're doing it, but something dissolves the action. It can be both a country attacks a country. It can be people revolting against the country, people against the government, people against themselves, like whatnot. And then there's just this, it's not blocked action, it's fading into the air. So there is also the potential for some invisible action. Okay? And Mars Neptune, for those who have it natally or harvest this natally, it may signify of spying, hacking, viral hacking, viral penetration into large system. It can be healthcare system in this case, but it doesn't have to be. Neptune rules all these things, okay? So it can be some grand hacking, some grand this, some grand that, but something is invisible, dissolving. There's just some meshing that happens. It can also be boundaries penetrated or boundaries dissolving in some way, shape, or form. If you encounter this in your personal life and it's in energy form, then again, remember non-specific, return to sender, non-specific, whatnot. That's like, it's very important to be non-specific and as well honor Neptune. Okay, so pray for missing people, pray for people who are whistleblowers. It can also be the act of whistleblowing with this one. And if that is the case, then it can be successful, but that depends. And there will be a lot of things that we don't know around it. So we have the Mars opposition Neptune on August 22 is the exact one. August 22 is the Mars opposition. Neptune here is on 26th degree of Pisces. Mars is 26th degree of Virgo. Mercury is applying to conjunct this Mars. So Mercury is also involved with this, orgy of misinformation. I really have no other way to say it. I can't state how not reliable this is for your personal interactions, which is going to be like, if you are one of the lucky Pisces ascendants out there, then first of all, good luck. I'm with you in that ship, but Saturn is in our sign. It's going to stay there for quite a while. Of course, anything going to our seventh will be affected by it. I'm saying afflicted. Affected. Okay? And for sure we have known some times where our seventh house was picked at, or where we had all these things squaring it. But now we are in this, Saturn is in Pisces. And now what's opposing, and Neptune, of course, and so Neptune's been there I don't remember the 1990s something, okay? I don't remember exactly. It's Neptune. You expect me to be exact with Neptune? It's dissonance. That means that anything that enters Virgo, anything that enters your Virgo house right now is getting the warm reception of Saturn, which is kind of like the okay. It's can we have a non-PC moment? I'm half my ancestry is Jewish, so there is this within Jewish society. There is this stereotype of Polish people that they are cold fishes. They're literally called cold fishes, called fish. So you get this called fish. It's like, you just came in. It's like, why didn't you bring flowers? So anything that enters Virgo is going to experience that. So there's Mars, there's Mercury, this will be Venus, and then you embark, you say, you're about to leave. Neptune is kind of like pickpocketing you. On your way out. So there's a cold entrance, you're greeted with the cold fish, and as you go out, there's something lost. That's the experience in Virgo right now, okay? There's nothing necessarily bad about Virgo that are nitpickers and excessively critical, but also tremendously caring to the finest detail when they do care, which is always, by the way. And you just have to live with it. So the thing is that Mars and Mercury are now at the exit. So now they're being pickpocketed by Neptune. Okay, what is Mars losing on its way out? What is a certain thing that you let go of on the way out? Okay, but here with Neptune, the loss, okay, is also quite important. A missed opportunity, a loss of opportunity, a certain loss, but depending on what. Of course, it can be human. Yeah, it can be people, dead people. But as a certain loss can be quite fortunate and quite benefic too. And trying to give an example of that. Well, Mars is heading into Libra, so it's very difficult to give an example of Mars in its fall. But if I'm trying to give a good example of that, you think about, okay, people have been to a party. It's this nature party, okay? And one of them bought some weed that they're in a place that they're not supposed to buy this, right? At the way out, they're being pickpocketed. They don't have this weed, okay? But then the police stops them, does a search on them, and finds nothing. That's Neptune, okay? That's Neptune. You lost something, but then, in retrospective, you're like, ooh, thanks God. That was not with me, okay? And if it is relational, it can be in relationship goes sour, you lost a significant other, and then along the years you find out that, ooh, oh my God, thank you, Neptune. Okay, but at its time, it's tremendous grief. It's tremendous, like, oh, what happened, like this? Why me? And so on and so forth. On a mundane level, loss, boundary violation, communication. Like I said, an orgy of misinformation. It's pretty much that. It can be literal orgy, like literal, like it can also be exposed stuff, like exposed, like nudities of people, or journalists, paparazzi, because it's Mercury, it's like paparazzi, or spying, or something like that, some scandal like that. It's still in orb here with the Uranus, so some unusual spectacle, so to speak. I would not put camera. I would not put camera in my kink for this menu, and I would not trust anybody who offers it as well. Okay, you might lose this person benefically. You know what I mean? So that can be, if it's 12th house for you, or some related vacation, you go on to vacation, there may be cameras, there may be this, there may be that. It's kind of like me speaking to a cell phone. No, yeah. But those type of things can occur. There can be glitches around technology. Again, it's a transit effect, but this is where people can lose their cell phones, or the partner can lose the cell phone, the computers, email writing, trying to eliminate information, but that actually, kind of pressing send instead of delete, or stuff like that. So this is for this transition. And then we have on August 25, the last notable aspect, which is Mars trine Pluto, Mars on the 28th degree of Virgo, still opposing Neptune, of course, still trining Uranus. And we have a kite shape with the opposition here to Neptune. I kind of discussed that, okay? I kind of discussed that because it's that everything is all set, you shoot the arrow and it melts in the air. Okay, it's also summertime where I'm at, so it's going to be definitely melting in the air. The iron is melting, just so. So, yeah, Mars Pluto trine, which you see here is in context, but separating from this Neptune. Well, Mercury is retrograding, it's also separating from that Neptune, but it's still in orbit, still opposition. I don't use that tight orbs. It is energy, okay? Depending on how sensitive you are to energy, you're going to see it in the world or experience that. But here Mercury is still opposing Neptune, so any Mars action here can bear a loss, can bear dissolving, can bear something missing, not going, not being interpreted, any communication, not only for the Mercury retrograde, but the opposition to Neptune, lost in translation, you know what I mean? That's pretty much the case. Mars, Pluto is kind of like a very elaborated and informed strategy that you just cannot apply now, or that in praxis goes weird when you try to apply it. Doesn't mean the strategy is wrong, it's just context. So this is Mars in Virgo. This is Mars in Virgo. And because of the presence of the co-presence of Mercury and the Mercury turning retrograde on us, then Mars in Virgo is going to be blissfully ineffective. On a physical erotic level, you can experience these issues as intimacy issues. Like I said, Mars and Venus are going through something. This is the best time to actually cultivate compassion towards yourself, cultivate radical acceptance, cultivate valuing yourself regardless of your abilities right now, because Mars is also drive Mercury is communication. So you can feel disability. You can feel like your abilities are blocked. You can feel very frustrated, okay? So this is a good time where on a more, from a bird's eye view, it's kind of like who I am where I can, perform, who I am where I try to think of this, but I say that, who I am underneath, basically, and cultivate compassion towards that. Words don't come easy with this transit, and the words that do come out, they don't really mean what they're intended to say. And you gotta have a lot of compassion for the essence of people in general. It's not a good time to communicate. It's not a good time to patch things up. It's not a good time. And anything that you must sign at this time, you will have to revise, to redo, and maybe even there will be loss related to it. But it can be that you very much idolize what this is, and it's actually more of a, I must do this, but it's not the ideal thing. Okay. Needless to say, if Pisces is your seventh, if Pisces is your first, and to some degree your seventh as well, that's not the time you want to commit, okay? Nor pressure anybody to commitment. It's very important. Authenticity is quite difficult, okay? And for those of you like me who have it in the seventh, with Mercury ruling the seventh, and retrograde in the seventh, it will oppose Saturn and then oppose Neptune. So you must understand that even though the ruler of your seventh is in the seventh, here's one of the signification of your starting a partnership, starting a commitment, or dissolving one. Further, it probably favors dissolving one more than starting one. But even upon dissolving one, you must be very compassionate. You must be very radically accepting that there is some blur going on here. Okay? And so, depending on other factors, if in your chart, there is perhaps a blessed arousal and a blessed dissolution of that arousal at this time. Needless to say, it's not the marrying time, okay? It's not about they're not the marrying kind, you're not the marrying kind. It's not the marrying time, okay? And that also means joint ventures and business. It's not just relationships that are of marital quality. It's also not the combating time. Okay, and this is important. It's not where you want to launch an attack or file a lawsuit. If somebody if somebody does something like that, then with Mercury retrogrades, like it's not gonna have longevity. If you have to be in court, like for divorce, then it's quite an unfortunate time to do so. But the good effect is that the losses that you may have may prove more benefic than you understand, and you will, as you grow older, you will not regret that you didn't get to get it in. Okay, and this is very important because the benefic aspect of this entire, Mars through Virgo, with this Mercury and this blocked action and this dissolving action, can very well be that you are coming combative, full of passion, and paramount ignorance about who the other person is and maybe even who you are. And in 10 years, in 12 years, you're going to look back, you're going to think back. Why I say 10 years, 12 years? Because the eclipses, the nodes are involved. You can't ignore it. You're going to look back and you say, oh my gosh, thanks God that God blocked me from saying that God blocked me from doing that. Thanks God that was not successful. Thanks God we didn't this. or if you separated, thanks God I didn't launch this attack that my lawyer advised to me. Thanks to God I didn't accuse him or her of stuff. That, or thanks God I didn't, explode these things or, whatnot. Or be aware. It's like maybe there was a misfortune, there was a loss, and you're like, oh my gosh, thanks God I got it in this loss and not in, God forbid, something else. Okay. Or so it's like, oh, I lost money, but I did not lose my, like, which is unlikely for divorce, unfortunately, nowadays. Because like it come as money did not come as my health, or it comes as it's like, oh, or it can be so like somebody loses custody over the children, but then they regain it as they receive help to withdraw from alcohol or something like this. It can be something, there's a loss, but there's this overcoming, this enduring. Saturn helps you to get out of addiction, and the Neptune dissolves what needs to be dissolved. So this is if it is more like divorce type of thing. You got like pack a lot of compassion along the way. Venus is going to be retrograde, then Mercury is going to be retrograde, and you're gonna, like, a lot of people are going to have on a mundane level the experience of being neurodivergent. Okay, as a person who has CPTSD and I'm neurodivergent in this way, and ADHD and so on, but I turn less to these tags and more to being a human being, then it can be the time on a mundane level where a lot of people experience such neurodivergence. A lot of people experience increased sensitivity to frequency, and thus can be sensations through the nervous system, difficulties to concentrate or to express yourself, or learning, saying this instead of that, fated fiascos. I just had one. I did a lunar mention and I read semen as in seed, semen of men, instead of seamen, like people who go in the sea. And I had a story related to that. So it's like, it's probably fated for me to tell this story, and that's why I made that mistake. A lot of those stuff. So to me, it happens a lot, especially around communication, especially around relationships. But fated mistakes, fated glitches, glitches in technology, not being able to find the right words, forgetting things or suddenly remembering things. It's kind of this dissociation and bringing things together. Acts of speech that are weird, so like funny humor, weird jokes, that can come out of like neural related stuff, okay? And all of these stuff can come up. People can feel self-criticism or criticize each other. This is on a mundane level. A lot of people will experience this in some way, shape, or form. So it can be your boss. It can be you as a boss. It can be, and especially beware of the type of jokes that are like erotic glitches, okay? We really need to do something structural about this, because not all people who say something bad are actually, in this current structure, if a person has neurodivergence, they will be recruited to some nasty organizations, because those will give them validation, and that's where they find their place in society. But if we change the structure, and we're not dependent on this boss to get recommendation or this lecturer to get recommendation, it's for our very well-being and survival and legacy, then we can accommodate for more things and more divergence, while carrying compassion. That's a lot of the lessons of neurodivergence. Because somebody has a Tourette and they have tics, and they also say stuff that is like blunt or something like that. It's way easier to get that where they're not recruited to a human trafficking organization, and put in a situation where you depend on them for their recommendation in your next workplace. If you decide that like you can't do with that, or that you're triggered for some reasons, and so on and so forth. So this one brings it up. Okay, it can be your workplace, it can be the family. Your sister is dating somebody, and you're at the dinner party, and they have like they have some neurodivergence, and they say something weird. You're being triggered by it, and then with the time you will think about it and say, oh my gosh, thanks God I didn't say this, or hey, that is something that like I'm glad I found out, or something like that. So this is the Mars Virgo. In terms of army, we can have a lot of really funny fiascos. You think about failed army, we can have a lot of episodes of failed army with this one, because any military action is blocked by the merit of Mercury, and then dissolves by the merit of Mercury, and further harassed by Mercury retrograde. So it's a failed army. It's even satire can have a failed army. And I want to tell you, actually, well, no, I won't. I won't. In the spirit of blocked action and blocked active speech, I won't tell it now in this time and space. But even doing a satire can be a bit of a fail army, and we really need to cultivate laughing at ourselves, and yeah, like prepare the popcorn. Anyway, thank you for watching.